Hello, welcome back to my studio. In this demonstration, I'm going to be doing another snow scene. I'm going to be painting this specifically to get a strong pattern and use color expressively. This involves trees, it involves cold snow, warm snow, or I should say, of course, light, cold light, warm light. And in this case, I'm going to do the painting in acrylics, just for a change, which does change a few things about my brushwork and the paint application. But in general, I'm always going for a vibrant painting and one that has some expressive color qualities to it. So let's get started painting, and I'll go over to the easel. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so you can see the reference that I'm going to be using, and there's lovely strong shadows that I can work with there, and nice interesting light. I'm using some watercolor paper, 300 gram. This is cold press. And colors, got titanium white, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, some orange, some red light, some magenta, burnt sienna, and yellow lemon. And there's a little bit of sap green, just in case I need it to help me make some darks with the green and the magenta. And that's about it. So I'm going to try and work fairly quickly, keep this quite simple, and just start with roughing in a composition. I'm going to use a little bit of burnt sienna there and just get the horizon line above the midpoint. Rough in the trees and slight sort of diagonal. I'll try and get some sort of diagonal if working if I can, but the focal area in the rule of thirds is going to be somewhere there. And then sort of the few important tree shapes that sort of will be described more accurately. Just place that. There's a lot of trees, but we don't want to paint all of them. We just want to suggest lots of trees. And there are some important shadows. And just sort of place where that's going to go. And we'll add a few more in. Probably as we go, we just decide on that. There's some details in that snow as well that help to just get a bit of variety from all the verticals. We want a bit of horizontal as well. All right, I'm just going to okay, I'm using a selection of synthetic brushes. These are De La Rani Krilla brushes, and I'll mostly use the long flats. So let's get started with that. Now there's good strong light in the sky. So I'm going to get that in first, because we'll go over that with the darker trees later on. So the first thing is the strong sort of focal area, and that's almost a light yellow. Now we're going to put that in more or less there. And then as that radiates with light from the center out, the light cools down, becomes darker. So let's get some yellow without white in there. And then the yellow starts to deepen. And I'll bring a little bit of orange into that lemon yellow to make it into a deep yellow. And as the light radiates behind the trees, it will actually cool down. The color temperature of the light cools down pretty rapidly, and we go from orange to reds and burnt siennas, alizarin, crimson, that sort of thing. So we got to darken the color, and it gets cooler. I even bring in some burnt sienna, and especially down over here as it gets lower to the ground. And these transitions are obviously soft edged, so we'll manage that as we go. Now into the sky, the light also cools down. But starts to react with the blue sky, and we'll get an almost a cool greenish tinge to it. So a bit of lemon yellow, white, and a little touch of cobalt blue. And that almost gets a gray, cool gray blue. The further away it gets, the bluer it will become and colder. So that's the rough transition. Now we're getting this really nice contrast between warm and cool already. That sort of sunburst effect. Now we need to get some strong darks. I'm going to bring in burnt sienna and ultramarine blue and get a few strong darks, suggestion of the trees. A bit of cobalt blue as we go up, as it cools. Color temperature just so important. And we will cut in and suggest more trees and information as we go. So some of these trees coming right into the foreground. The main tree over here. And just stagger these trees. You don't want them all in the same perfect line. You can lean them over as well to help direct the eye. Okay, now there's a suggestion of a lot of loose, small twigs, which gives a sort of blurred impression. So we do something similar and just create a soft blur suggestion as well. As the branches here are closer to the main source of light, they are quite light themselves, as all that yellow is refracting, diffusing the shapes. So we do the same using warm color. Just bringing some white into this to make the color slightly opaque, so I can soften the edges up. And just get the gradation back in place. And using quite thick paint here. To cut in. Okay, a few more trees over here, but with cooler and darker color. Using cobalt blue now, much colder. And just scumbling the brush a bit. some very cold light on the edge over here. Some more cobalt. And over here as well. Now using some of this cobalt to just cut in and reveal more tree shapes. So painting in the negative space, revealing positive shapes. Just suggestions. Okay, so that is an impression of the trees. We're going to do some more tree shapes, just letting some of that thicker acrylic impasto dry, especially around the sun here. So let's move into the snow. Now we're going to use cobalt blue because it's so cool. And having a look at the reference, we can see there's a nice sort of diagonal, not only that way, but across. So more or less like that, and then getting quite strong. So that is useful. This diagonal over here gives a nice bit of energy and sense of movement. So I'm going to use basically cobalt straight out the tube here in the darkest part of the painting. I can cut in with some lighter shapes here and there, but for now, let's just get in the coldest dark color. A little touch of magenta in there, suggestion of a purple or violet. And as the shadow moves out, more light is falling into the shadow, and therefore it will get lighter. Now we get quite a strong shadow from this tree, and the shadow must be cold, so I'm going to make it blue. But the shadows also soften up as they move away because light is falling into them. They can even get a bit of magenta in there to bring in some violet. So a variety of color temperature is good. Some touches of violet in there. And then there's some light falling in, so a slightly warmer violet over here. Now you can make your colors expressive. Bring in a touch of yellow, touches of red, even pinkish, warm colors as the lights come forward. And we're creating pattern cutting in a bit, and some really nice warm snow colors in the foreground here. So more yellows. Now, a few suggestions of light in the background. Add some depth as well. So you can see in the reference there is light in the deep in the forest, falling in between the trees. And this all helps to create a pattern, breaking up big shapes, making the overall painting more interesting. All right, there's some shadows cast by something has gone through the snow. And these patterns just break things up and make things more interesting. All right, let's get more of the snow down, and then we've got to get back into the trees and get more details into those trees. Some very nice sort of pink colors in the foreground here, and violet, and a few strong yellows I want to get in as well, just to echo the focal area of the sun. Then we see the warmth also diminishing as the light moves away from the sun. We get that same effect on the snow as well. In shadow, other shadows will disappear. So shadow is just a much more flat shape of cool color. And we got some shadow coming down the foreground. And the shadows get softer. It's a nice bit of impasto. A few of those warm colors coming through as well. And then there's a shadow across the foreground, which also sort of echoes this diagonal. Let's get some more snow. Sort of a kind of a gray over here, cooling down. Okay, back into those trees we spoke about. So, a bit of burnt sienna, a bit of red, and we'll drag a few tree shapes going over the light. And you can see the branches almost disappearing, especially the thin branches will practically disappear. And then as the branches emerge, they will get a bit darker, almost lost and found. And a few cooler trees now further away from the light. And getting darker. Some more blue coming into those colors. Bring sort of the darker reds now down here. And just a few cut-ins over here. Bring in some color. A few stronger tree shapes, extending into the middle to foreground. Just to break up the space. Right, let's cut in a little the sky. Get in some sky holes over here, I think. Just a sort of warmer greenish blues. All right, I think that takes care of the trees. Now let's just finish off the snow. Soften a few edges, a few sky holes in the snow. Just clean up some of these shadow lines.
Are you filming?
clean color notes. Soften some edges. And just clean up some of these shadow shapes. Few little sparks. And I think we'll call that complete. A very quick and expressive color depiction of this light effect. Just a few little, this is too narrow, need to just thicken this up. All right. Let's get some tape off and have a closer look. Okay, there is our expressive color study in acrylics, and quite a vibrant, almost abstract version of this scene. You can make it as detailed as you want, or as loose and expressive and colorful as you like. When it comes to acrylics, I like strong color, and I think this is a good subject to carry that off. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that little lesson, and you can try out something really exciting with your next acrylics painting as well. Thanks for joining me.